Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for spending your morning with us right before lunch. We can all go eat after. My name is Jenny Buccos. I am CEO of a company called EXPLR. I'm also co-director of the National STEM Festival, which is happening in 15 days' time in Washington, D.C., and I have the privilege of being your moderator today. Change in STEM is constant and accelerating, from AI and automation to sustainability and shifting workforce needs. The way we design, make, and prepare the next generation is evolving fast. Today, we'll explore how education, industry, and government can work together to turn these challenges into opportunities and empower future innovators. Before we dive in, I'd like to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, who they are, what they do, and why this conversation matters to them. And if it's okay, Maria, I'd like to start with you.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Flynn, and I am the president and CEO of an organization called Jobs for the Future. We are a national nonprofit that drives equitable economic advancement for all, and we have a big North Star goal, which is that by the year 2033, we want to see 75 million US workers who face barriers to economic advancement working in quality jobs. So this conversation is important to me because I think a huge part of those quality jobs are going to come from STEM industries. So how can we be sure that we are building equitable pathways into those opportunities across the country?
Great. Lino?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lino Marrero. I'm an 18-year-old inventor from Frisco, Texas. And for the past 8 years, I've been developing inventions to solve problems in my personal life and in our world as a whole, like fingers hurting when playing the guitar or even climate change. And this conversation is important to me because as a young person in STEM, I really want to be able to make an impact on the lives of other young people in STEM and spread empowerment for young people to be able to step up and get a seat at the table like I kind of am today. So I'm really excited.
Excellent. Hi, I'm Jennifer Fox, and I am from Autodesk Research. And if you don't know Autodesk builds software that empowers people to design and make anything, which sounds very ambitious, and it is. And this is in industries like design and manufacturing, architecture, construction, operations, media and entertainment. But most relevant to folks in the room, our mission in education is to inspire and empower students to learn the skills, hands-on experience, and credentials that they're going to need to design and build a better world. So, and my interest is, I'm a woman in STEM, I'm a researcher by training, I'm a first-generation STEM person, and I want to give back, and I want to figure out more ways that industry can partner with students and with government educational institutions.
Thank you. And Lino, you've used Autodesk's
Yes,
tools in some of your early prototypes and design, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Autodesk is great.
Cool. Lino, I'd love to start with you. I always love starting with the student voice, and for those of you in the room, anytime you're having a conversation about education, I implore you to ensure that the student voice is front and center in everything you do. So that's just like my little call to action for you today. Anytime you're in the room, are we giving students a literal voice and seat at the table? So Lino, from your experience, what challenges do students face in current STEM education?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of challenges that students from different backgrounds and different places face, but one thing that I think that relates to all students is not being heard. It's very difficult sometimes to get adults to listen to young people who are passionate about things, and they kind of think, oh, we know best because we have more experience and we're older. But I think it's really important to emphasize that young people are creative and they have so many bright new ideas that can further their own education, but also further the world. So I think definitely being heard, like you said before, getting a seat at the table. And so that's why it's so important to do events like this.
Great. And Maria and Jen and Lino, I'd really love to keep this a conversation. So at any point, feel free to interrupt me, jump in, add a perspective. Lino, I have one more question before we go to Maria and Jen. Beyond technical skills, what portable skills, and you had a different name for them, portable skills, transferable skills?
Yes, durable skills.
Durable skills. Do you think students need to succeed in the future workforce?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I think is resilience. And being able to overcome challenges, not just see a challenge and get stumped by it. I mean, finding different ways to overcome different issues, being versatile, being able to just excel in any situation. And I think one important thing for that is learning to fail, learning to lose, learning that it's okay not to win all the time. Because once you realize that failure is not something that stops you, but it's something that actually births a new beginning. And so I think that is so important, learning to lose and being resilient in the face of that loss.
Great. And I listened to one of the panels you did yesterday. You had a great story about failure and when you're competing at competitions like Invention Convention and the National STEM Festival, that you demonstrate failure before you get to success. Do you mind just sharing that story? Because I think it's so brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people mark their progress through their victories and through how far they've come. And well, the way I like to see how far I've come is through my losses, through my failures, through my mistakes. And so every time I go to a competition and I'm making a new invention, I always keep a logbook, that's the first thing, with all my trial and errors. And I add a new page for each trial that doesn't fail on each error. And so when I'm preparing for the competition, I sit down, I go through that logbook, and on my board, I section off a little piece just for my failures. So I have a little symbol for each prototype, each time that it didn't work out and that I had to find another way. So it's a reminder to myself of how far I've come, but also a cool way to show the people who I'm presenting to that failure is not a bad thing, that you're eventually gonna lose. And most of my inventions take me months or even years to get competition ready. So I think it's definitely important to not forget that how far you've come through your failures. And it's a great way to measure your progress.
Great, thank you.
Could I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, please.
When you think about resilience and kind of how you have learned to learn from your failures, do you feel that you had the opportunity to kind of learn that skill in school, or do you think that you found it most that you learned it outside of your traditional classroom?
Yeah, for me, I think it was definitely outside the traditional classroom. I think it was outside of school STEM opportunities, outside of school and inventing opportunities especially. Yeah. Inventing is what did it for me, especially from such a young age. Yeah. I started inventing when I was 10 years old. And I think that we need more of that, more young, even little kids realizing that that losing isn't something that's bad, it's something that's good. And so I learned to fail from a very young age. My first time I ever made an invention, I made it to a national level competition and I lost. And that loss really shook me because I was not preparing to lose. I was I've won all this far. And at that point, it was all about the winning for me. But the next year I came back because I really wanted to win again, and I didn't win. And the next year I came back and I did win. And at that point I realized it's not about the winning anymore. It's not about winning a prize or winning an award. It's about creating something that is meaningful to you and that can help the world around you. And so losing definitely taught me that, and I would say, I was outside of the classroom for me.
Great. Maria, I'd love to turn to you. Based on some of the challenges and the durable skills, and I love that term, that Lino talked about, given these challenges, where do you see the biggest gaps are between education and workforce needs?
Sure. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of gaps. So I do think one is we just continue to see a general misalignment between what industries are looking for and how schools are delivering education. And there are, of course, pockets of great examples of innovation where schools are working closely with industry to provide work-based learning opportunities for students and internships. But by and large, that alignment isn't there. And I think especially as technology continues to shift at such an accelerated pace with the ongoing development of AI, we need to find ways for schools, whether that be our traditional schools, whether it be kind of new types of higher ed providers, to really be agile in what they're offering and how they are delivering that education. So finding just ways to really scale work-based learning, ways to embrace competency-based education to really enable students to take credit for skills they already have. How can we just be embracing new models? So I think it's that alignment and the agility that's needed is where we need to continue to focus.
And have you seen any policies or initiatives or programs that you could highlight that have been really successful in bridging that gap?
So definitely. So one is a national effort called the STEM Opportunity Alliance, and JFF, we're one of about 100 organizations that are part of this effort that was launched during the prior presidential administration, but it really looks to the fact that partnerships are key, right? If we're really going to be moving at scale, it has to be partnerships between government and nonprofit and companies and R&D institutions. So at JFF, we're kind of the lead partner for the workforce pillar of the strategy. But I think it's a great example of organizations that are really coming together and seeing like, how do we leverage each other's strengths? How do we scale what works? And how to have a real integrated kind of national STEM equity strategy. So that's, I think, a really promising example. The other is, I just want to give a shout out to our partners at STEM Next, which is really focused, I think, to your point, like how do you focus on the great STEM opportunities that are happening outside of the classroom, either through after school or out of school time. So personally, I'm a former 4-H'er, so 4-H is an example of that. I used to be a Girl Scout leader. Scouting is a great example of that. But too often those experiences that kids are having that are so valuable really don't connect back to what they're learning in school. So, or to some of the government-funded systems that are out there. And so one example is that STEM Next has a grant from the U.S. Department of Labor that we're part of that's working in 4 states to really start to make those connections between what is happening kind of in the public systems and what is happening in these out-of-school programs and how to build a more comprehensive system in that way.
Maria, if it's all right, I was just wondering, what advice would you have for students like me who are in school right now, and when there is this disconnect, like what can we do to kind of take matters into our own hands?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. So I think staying curious, really being engaged and like reaching out to employers and partners in your community. I know my oldest daughter, like growing up in a household where I've always worked on the issue of jobs, and in 8th grade she came home and she said, "Mom, no one has talked to us about jobs yet." And I thought that was so telling, right? And so I think, and also like giving feedback to the school officials around like, where do you see opportunities for there to be more connections, like how to help teachers really get an understanding of what's happening in the local labor market. So I think there's a huge opportunity for student voice there.
Absolutely, that goes back to being able to listen to the young people as well,
Exactly.
and getting your voice heard.
Yeah.
Great. So Jennifer, I'd like to shift a little bit, putting the industry cap on here.
Okay.
What skill sets and mindsets do you think from an industry perspective are most in demand today?
Okay. I've got a really good pitch. It's my only pitch for folks in the audience. And that is, Autodesk has put out a special report recently that is very easy to search for and find. I'm going to get the name right so you can Google it. But it's a spotlight on skills in the age of AI. And so they talked to educators, and they talked to business leaders, and they surveyed those folks on what they thought were hard skills and soft skills, or skill sets and mindsets. And the experts said that the hard skills they're looking for most are data analytics and project management, followed closely by coding and programming and AI and machine learning. So if you listen to the educators and experts, that's where they're placing their thoughts on skill sets for the future. And for mindsets, I think of it as an entrepreneurial mindset. And that's a background I come from. It's obviously a background that I think everyone on the stage comes from, but innovation, risk-taking, questioning things, agility, right? Collaborative nature, communication, the kinds of things that really enable someone to take an idea and make this into a business. So that entrepreneurial, advocating for yourself, things that we're talking about, very important.
On that, I think there's a great opportunity too for some of the career and technical education pathways that are doing such great work, like how to build in some of the entrepreneurial skills and like kind of small business like mentality into those pathways too, I think is a opportunity that can be built upon.
So for the people in the room, and I'm thinking that most people will know this, when you talk about entrepreneurial skills, you're talking about durable skills, which used to be called soft skills. Yeah. Is that what we're talking about? I just want us all on the same page
yes,
here.
So that I would say yes, and I think really, particularly for students who are in kind of STEM-oriented CTE programs, giving them the skills early on so that they can be thinking about, like, do they want to start their own small business? Do they want to kind of move into invention? So kind of the intersection between CTE and business, I think, is an area that gets underinvested in.
Great, thank you. I have a follow-up question for you. So what role do you think industry plays in shaping the future workforce? And how can companies work more closely with schools? And this can be either through Autodesk or other industries you might know that are really working to ensure that that's there.
I would say it's of crucial importance. I mean, just nuts and bolts reasons to have people that are going to fill the jobs at those industries. They should be looking to partner with educational institutions, with government, and with students so that they can make sure that they have a resilient workforce, that we don't run out of folks for these things. And I would say, I do think Autodesk is a great example, which is really what led me to join the company. My background is mostly in research and academics and running a nonprofit, but I was incredibly impressed with this 40-year-old company that has this vast amount of software and knowledge, but that puts a high priority on providing free software to students and educators in educational institutions. So I think it is 100 million people have used software for free, and I think Lino is one of them, so I'm very proud of that. And also providing software and expertise pro bono to startups and nonprofits that work in sustainability and resilience fields. That very much attracted me to Autodesk, and I think they walk the walk. And I've been very impressed to see that. And we even have technology centers where students and startups and entrepreneurs can come and use space like Makerspace, talk with software engineers, give feedback, you know, what works or doesn't work for your work as a student or a startup.
Absolutely, yeah. And also the pro bono aspect is so important as well. I mean, it's breaking down the barriers, the traditional barriers to STEM that there are currently, and I think we need more of that, more inclusivity, more, I mean, when you go to these competitions that I go to a lot, you don't oftentimes see low-income or underprivileged students, and that is so disappointing, because think about how much problems they have and how many great inventions could come from that, how creative they must be, how innovative they must be, just no one gave them the opportunity or taught them, so that's why it's so important about Autodesk.
Maria, have you seen any really great examples of industry, and you don't have to name specific, but just even broader industry that have really been successful in driving that education connection?
Yeah, definitely. So we've seen a number of companies, like particularly in the IT sector, that are partnering with high schools in particular to both like embed more of these kind of curriculums and certifications like in the high school experience. And so I think there's a general understanding that we need to be starting earlier, right? We can't kind of wait until someone graduates from high school or college. We need to start building these experiences into high school and even ideally middle school. So I think we're seeing companies, you know, stepping up and investing in some really great ways. Yeah. Healthcare too, I think, is another example.
Healthcare.
And something I'm really interested in is Bloomberg Philanthropy is investing, I think, in 10 cities where they are actually working with healthcare providers to really build new built-for-purpose high schools that will serve as a pipeline into healthcare professions. So they're only about a year in, but I think it's a really interesting model.
Absolutely. So like future forecasting here, thinking about like the jobs, because you said 75 million?
75 million yeah.
By 2030?
Yeah, 2033.
2033.
Yeah.
So future forecasting, what are the industries that should really start to step it up?
I think a lot of them are STEM impacted industries. So I think especially if you think about where will the demand like continue to be like as AI continues to advance. So I think, you know, healthcare, different aspects of IT, advanced manufacturing, are all going to be critical, like clean energy. And I think we're going to see just STEM being a need like across a lot of these growth areas. And I think what we need to see is we need to see states and local communities like continuing to really keep an eye on like where are these trends going. Because I think a lot of times we see maybe states like set sectors that were a priority 5 years ago, and they may not be the right ones anymore. And I think that's where, again, we need to see that agility, the kind of real-time assessments, and the willingness to like stop what's not in demand and start something new.
Great, thank you. Anything to add before I move on?
I've seen that firsthand. That resonates. I would say it's difficult to ask government to be agile.
Yeah.
That is a challenge. But you're right. When you place bets on just specific industries, they might not be the right bets, or they might not be what students are most interested in either. So I think just having the awareness to keep scanning the horizon and changing your policy so that you can fund things that are coming out of left field.
Yeah.
Super important.
Great. Lino, I'm going to come back to you. Senior in high school.
Yes.
Getting ready to make a decision on what's next. No decision yet. Maybe you'll announce it later. Knowing what you know now, what helped you succeed, and what do you think is still missing for students in high school and middle school?
Well, one thing that definitely helped me succeed that I don't hear a lot of is I started so young. I mean, not even middle school. I started in elementary school. The golden number I hear a lot is ages 8 to 13. Like that's when kids are most creative and they don't have these barriers, this routine that's put into them. I mean, that's a big difference between kids and adults as well. Like adults kind of have a set routine. They're told, oh, get over it. Oh, that's just part of your life. And I hate that so much because those phrases are just discouraging any innovation or any growth or any progress. And so, yeah, I think definitely starting very, very young as we can, would be great. You catch a hold of that creativity and maybe the kid can hold on to it. But aside from that, getting a mentor has helped me. For every invention that I do, a lot of my inventions are in different fields, different projects, and I have had many different mentors in many different sections. One of my mentors was a someone who made shoes. I'm forgetting the name right now, what that's called, but a shoemaker. And then another one of my inventors is like an invention education consultant, and another one's an engineer. And so just having the skill of being able to reach out to these random people and say, hey, I'm a young inventor, and I think your expertise could help me, because you have to realize too, you don't have all the knowledge, especially when you're younger as well, you're getting new, you're newly introduced to the field. So you can research and learn all you want, but someone who's had that experience, that's still definitely valuable, I'd say as well.
Great. Can we dive into that a little more? Mentorships, apprenticeships. Jenna Marie, I'd love to hear, how do students find that? What is the importance of it? Do we have any, data points or personal stories that we can talk about? I'd love to hear from both of you on this.
Yeah, so I definitely agree. I think like access, awareness, like navigational supports are so needed. I read a statistic recently that only 46% of young people even kind of like have an understanding or an awareness of what, STEM pathways exist, right? So I think we have a big information gap. And then, I was also reading about how, even for young people who maybe can name some STEM occupations, there's a big gap between that kind of recognition and actionable awareness. So a lot of times they will kind of instantly dismiss, STEM as being like out of reach or too difficult or something they can't afford. And so it's really making that initial awareness and then bridging that gap between awareness and the ability to act on something. And I think that your point surrounds like really evening the playing field, between like whether it's a well-resourced community or a lesser resourced community, how do we make these things equally available. So something that we're really focused on in partnership with American Student Assistance is around career navigation. So we launched a Center for Career Navigation last summer, and a big piece of that is going to be helping particularly high school students really get a better sense of what their future options are that and especially those that are beyond or kind of different than your traditional four-year degree route. And that's where I think a lot of times in STEM, the conversation trends towards STEM occupations that require a four-year or an advanced degree, which are like critically important, but understanding that there's a whole range of quality pathways that might be accessible through a registered apprenticeship program or a high-quality short-term credential. So how do we kind of broaden the discussion to include those as well?
I love that. I think you hit the nail on the head. In my own experience, I came from a rural background. I was always a huge fan of sci-fi and reading sci-fi books, and this will date me. I was born in the 1900s, but I'll say when I was in high school, they began the Human Genome Project, sequencing the first human genome, and it caught my imagination wildly. But when I started college, I was asking you earlier what you were going to major in. I thought, well, I'm going to major in art. And I started college. Of course, I took like Bio 101. And it was the first time anyone had said to me, hey, I think you could do this. I think you're really good at science. Would you like to work in my lab for the summer? And I was stunned. It never had occurred to me, because you think you've met a doctor, you've met a dentist. I know where to place these people in my lexicon. I'd never met a scientist. I didn't even know how you would get to that. But working in the lab was so fun, and it opened up all these doors to me. And I thought, I guess anyone could do this. So you don't need a special invitation, but just that mentoring, just someone to put it out there that they thought that I could do that was so powerful. And I've been lucky enough to have those people all along the way, and some people who were not exactly so mentoring, but getting over those things, like you said, you learn from failures. So I think I would have been on a very different course if I did not have mentorship along the way. And I love to mentor students. We have interns, which has been great. And then, we've got educators in the audience. When you think about getting to kids young, you said 8 to 13, many people might not know, but if you've worked with Tinkercad in your classroom, that's an Autodesk product. Absolutely. And 75 million kids have worked with Tinkercad and created something like 600 million designs. So maybe that's their first taste of getting something really fun and creative from STEM, and then producing something that they could bring home and show to their family and friends.
Absolutely, yeah. And just telling kids that they can do this too. Like, a lot of people think, oh, engineer, doctor, like it's so hard, it's so difficult, but you can do that too. Like, we need to see more of that. Like, telling these kids that anyone can do it, you can do it, and even having them idolize these jobs too, like making these jobs role models. I mean, everyone wants to be an athlete when they're little, or a soccer player. But I mean, if we could say, hey, like, engineers are really cool too. Look at this, like from a young age, that would be amazing. We could see so much more.
Yeah, it makes me think of like 20 years ago when the CSI TV show came out. Like all the young people wanted to be like CSI investigators, right? But we need something like similar to that again. I think. Yeah.
It was like, what was it called, the Fauci effect during COVID. Medical school applications went up almost 30% for people who wanted to work in public health. So I think maybe we need that moment in AI, machine learning. So if you're a TV producer, like, let's think about that for a second. I'd love to talk a little more, Jen, with you about internships, opportunities, and particularly for things around Autodesk does around design and make that don't require four-year degrees. We just did a great virtual office hours with someone who uses Autodesk software in construction. Can you talk about some of the opportunities, like how old do you have to be? What are some of the different industries you cross? Because I don't think people realize like the breadth and depth of what you do and how many opportunities are out there.
Sure, because you say design and make, and you can imprint a lot of different things on that, but I think when we're talking about design and make, it's this continuum that goes all the way from ideation to design to prototyping to manufacturing and distribution, right, ideally. Or maybe you're in the loop of ideation and design and repeat, but if you think about all the fields that we touch, it's everything from construction to animation. Lots of breadth of places for people to be.
Okay, so animation's a STEM job then?
That is right.
Okay.
Exactly. So we're thinking CGI, we're thinking character development, things that are using software. So you don't need an advanced degree for many of those professions. There are hands-on jobs, and the software is just an enabler to do that better and to connect people digitally to collaborate. So if you're thinking about all the people in that design and make continuum, you need a digital place to collaborate. You know, I need some place to show my artistic designs to an engineer, to perhaps someone who's going to prototype those things. So you've got a virtual space there. And if that community is a varied community, and it's not all 4-degree folks. So likewise, the internships with Autodesk run from high school through, adults. So it's been very rewarding to see people in all parts of the company. Could be in marketing, could be, any place people are interested. So.
Yeah. And is that rare to have internships for high school and not just university? Because when I was in school, it wasn't an internship. It was free labor, and then it was an internship in college.
I would
is that
say
shifting?
It's definitely not happening at scale. I think Autodesk is like a great example of a company that's really leaning into this and really aligns their core business with like how they're engaging in their communities. So I think we are really working to work with states and communities that are embracing like dual enrollment or early college high school models, which is happening mostly at scale around the country, and really helping them embed more work-based learning opportunities in those models, or what we call work-based courses, which is actually like combining like an internship or work-based learning experience with that classroom learning like in the work site. And so we have a project funded by the U.S. Department of Education that's operating in Tennessee that's called Systems. So if you think it's like SY, but then capital STEM, because it's all really focused on providing work-based courses in the STEM fields as part of a student's dual enrollment experience. So we're really looking at how do we start to leverage some of these innovations happening at scale and bring more of a career focus to them. Because I think, again, that's where the opportunity is, and that's what we're hearing like from young people, that they want to see that relevance, they want to see the connection to the labor market, they want accelerated solutions. I think the model of 5-10 years ago of like, I'm going to go take this course for 18 months and like learn something new is like not what folks are interested in these days.
Absolutely. I think, well, I can relate to this as well. I think learning by doing is the best way that I learn. And a lot of other young people that I talk to say they learn best by actually going through not just going through the motions, but understanding what they're doing, understanding how this can be applied later and how it can be applied in their lives now. And so not for of course, career advancing fields as well, but also just like regular math, regular science, regular English. It's so much more interesting when you realize how can this apply to your life and how you can use it going forward.
Yeah, and in the Tennessee example, it's actually employers, so it's like industry that is doing a lot of the instruction and doing a lot of the grading. So it's really starting to blur the lines between traditional classroom and what's happening in the workplace. And it's great to see that a lot of those opportunities that the Tennessee students are getting are paid as well. So the students are earning while they're learning.
And why is that important?
Well, I think, and again, I think it's too rare, right? But I think it's important for young people to see the value of the effort that they're putting in. And I think it's also important for employers not to see this as, charity or free labor, that young people are providing value like to their core business and compensating them for that. So we encourage like all internships, work-based learning experiences, apprenticeships be paid for young people.
I agree. I mean, and that opens the door to, when I was in high school, I needed to have an after-school job. I needed to have a summer job. I needed that money. So I didn't have the luxury to be able to do something unpaid. So I love to hear that. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah. And I think another, like when we think about skills, I think there's an opportunity to help young people translate, like what are they learning either through that like official work-based learning opportunity or through their summer job or after-school job. how do they translate that experience into skills that they can put on a resume or a LinkedIn profile? Because I don't think that comes naturally. So I think that that's like another role that, you know, guidance counselors or like community leaders can play, is like really helping with that translation. Because I walked through that with my own daughter who's in college, because, you know, it was like, well, you know, you were a summer camp counselor. There's a way to articulate that into like very practical skills, and it's something that doesn't come naturally.
Great. I have just a few more questions. I'm going to remind the audience we're going to take your questions, so I expect to see a very long line because I've been very selfish in asking what I want to ask today. Lena, let's go back to the internships, apprenticeships for a moment. Knowing what you know now at the wise age of a high school senior, what helped you succeed? Sorry, we already asked this question. What advice would you give to students who want to prepare for STEM careers but don't have access to internships, mentors, apprenticeships, so all the things we've been talking about?
Yeah, well, the first thing that I would recommend is take matters into your own hands. You can't just wait around for somebody to come save you. Like, you have to go take action and do something about it. And a lot of my projects, I started not knowing anything relating to it. And the best thing that I did was go to the library, go online, and look at free resources. There are resources out there. I hope that there will be more soon, but there are some that you can look for that you can teach yourself. There's a lot of coding classes online and they learn how to code by themselves. So there are ways to learn by yourself, and of course it is easier with a mentor, and you have that stable, that support system, that scaffolding, but I think, yeah, you can take matters into your own hands, and that's what I would say, just to be actionable and to not just wait around, I'll do that when I get to college. Like, I'll learn it in college. No, you should try and learn it now. Learn as much as you can, and it'll better prepare you for college, but also your future. And you also don't need to go to college either, like you guys were saying. Like, maybe if you can teach yourself enough, then that's good enough for some people as well.
Great, thank you. So, Lena, that's your call to action for everyone in the room and everyone watching.
Yes.
Jennifer, I'm going to move to you. We touched on it a little bit. How does Autodesk help bridge the gap between education and industry to better prepare students? And do you have any examples that could serve as a call to action or inspiration for people here today?
Autodesk bridges the gap in so many ways. So yes, making things free, making them easy to find online, making them accessible for students and educators and educational institutions. I'd say also bridging the gap is just keeping an open dialogue. So we have worked with universities to work on new kinds of construction certifications and degrees, for instance. Getting that dialogue and being at the table and showing that you're interested, showing up, hopefully providing sponsorships, providing internships. We also have a foundation that provides grants to nonprofits that help students and that help make those connections. So I think it is having a 40+ year commitment to that and having a long history of that, and then you continuing to build on that every year. So especially becoming important with AI on the rise, I think.
Why is it important with AI on the rise?
I think it's
because this is the buzzword here.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
And we can't talk about future of work and preparing kids without touching on AI a little bit.
Sure. I think that this is something that is a sea change. This is something that people are gaining expertise in, but we're kind of at the very beginning stages of this and looking at more of this to come. And I would say at its best, AI can help people innovate and can help create more sustainable products, maybe can help people work in a more creative way. But I think of it as a collaboration between people and AI. And I don't see this as AI working to replace people. I see it as people who are more adept at AI will have an advantage.
Yeah.
And I hope that that involves more hands-on training, more learning, more outreach to schools, because we're trying to figure out the industry level. I can't imagine every school trying to figure this out on their own, or every state trying to develop a response to this. I think we've all got to pull together. This is going to be, it's a huge opportunity, but it's a huge challenge.
Yes. Yep. I agree. And I also think there's an opportunity to continue to, and a lot of entrepreneurs are already doing this, but really leveraging AI to really facilitate career navigation, right? So like kind of like AI-powered career coaches, career navigation systems, and also when we talk about skills, like AI's capability to really hone in on like identifying skill gaps, like really looking at internal advancement pathways within employers. We're seeing a lot of interesting startups like in that space. So kind of so AI as a power for economic advancement as well, I think is an interesting angle.
Lino, do they teach anything AI at your school?
I was wondering.
They don't teach it. Yeah, my school actually really doesn't like AI, but I think it's a very useful tool. Not only, sometimes I put my notes into AI and I say, tell me how I can go further. Like, what's the next step beyond learning this that I can do? It's such a valuable tool for learning. Instead of sitting there and Googling research, AI will just give you a list of all the links. It's a very, very valuable tool that I think we should be teaching, and we shouldn't be villainizing it. I think there was a booth at the festival yesterday I went to see. Their whole thing is combining all the AI that they can together to make a tool for teachers and for students so that they can further their learning and advance it. And I think that is so important. And then initiating stuff like that and building things that allow AI to be accessible, but also easy to interact with, and showing that it's not a bad thing. It's gonna help us go further and advance us.
What I loved, before I come to your last question, what I loved is the National STEM Festival in two weeks has 103 projects from students representing 48 states and 4 territories. And more than 30% of them were underpinned by AI and machine learning. And my big question is, every time I talk to someone, is where are you learning this? To use AI as a diagnosis tool in health and medicine, to use AI to figure out where to put food banks in cities with deserts. So I would love to know, where are people under 25 going to learn this, to teach themselves if they're not being taught in schools?
It's a kind of a funny answer, but YouTube, like
Great.
The internet.
YouTube University.
YouTube University. Most of it's self-taught, or also just practicing with it, like learning how to ask the right prompt, like how to format your prompt to the machine. Like you can get such a different response by adding different details into or sectioning off your prompt in different ways. So I think a lot of it is self-taught, a lot of it is learning by doing, by interacting with the AI itself. But yeah, I think AI is definitely very, very valuable. And if it's not going to be taught, then like I said, you got to go out and you got to figure it out yourself, I guess.
Is this encouraging to both of you as like workforce preparedness and industry, that they're just taking it into their own hands to innovate? And from what I've seen, doing it in an extraordinarily ethical way. Like, how are we using AI and ML for good?
Yeah, no, and I think it's just it's a great reminder of how like our traditional systems, I think, are behind, right? And so how can we accelerate the ability of our traditional like school systems, like workforce development systems, to be part of this moment, I think is a big opportunity and a big question of how we do that.
Great.
You had a great point, and that was, there's a human-only skill that is designing the right questions.
Yes.
Because you think of a prompt, and we're used to thinking of this as pretty low stakes, like a Google prompt. But there are human-only skills of asking the right questions of AI, of designing the right experiments. You know exactly how important that is.
Yeah.
And of interpreting the results, of recognizing when there are mistakes or biases.
Yeah.
Those are human-only skills that are absolutely essential to work well with AI. And I think it's only trial and error. So you're right. You can teach those things, but I think you have to live them and try and fail. So I think you're doing it perfect.
Thank you. Yeah, just going in, interacting with it, and using it ethically, like you said, and using it the right way. There is a right way and a wrong way to use AI. So just using it to advance your knowledge and to help you instead of completely replacing what you do as well, I think is a very important thing with AI.
I mean, I'll let you all in on my little secret. I have the privilege of reviewing every application that comes in for the STEM Festival, and I can't even understand some of the titles that they're putting forward. So I use AI to put all your projects in a closed circuit to say, please explain this to me so I can sound knowledgeable when I'm on panels with people like you. So, so
That's
thank you.
That's a great use for AI right there.
Maria, I'd love to end with you. How can we ensure future jobs are more successful and equitable for all students? And if you have a story, a data point, something that you've seen, I'd love this to sort of be like the call to action for the group today.
Yeah, so I think some key points are, one is partnership, right? Because I don't think any one entity or kind of player in this ecosystem can solve this alone. And I think as the points that were made, there are a lot of great resources, free resources that are out there. So really like take advantage of everything you can to move these ideas and these actions forward. And I think that like, especially in a moment when, you know, federal resources are, you know, kind of under attack in a lot of ways, where DEI efforts are also under attack, like not forgetting the importance of making all of these opportunities available across the board is so important. Otherwise, we're going to continue to see the gaps that already exist continue to widen. And so I think really centering both the importance of the learner and worker in this work, as well as the need for businesses to compete and the need that they have for talent, is something that like we need to center in these conversations, and really focusing on pathways of advancement that work both for the individual and the employer.
Great. So we'd love to take any questions from the audience. Please just use one of the microphones.
This is for Lino.
Yes.
Yes.
If you could design the college of the future, what would it be like?
College of the future, wow. That's a great question. That's a great question. If it was my dream college or my college of the future, definitely a lot of learning by doing. I think there'd be one class called Learn to Fail, Learning to Lose. I think I wrote that in one of my college applications, actually. It's like, if you could teach a class, what would it be called? And my class was Learning to Fail. And so I think definitely innovation and creativity oriented, not trying to push these kids into a line, into a box, like, oh, you're an engineer, you're gonna do this. Oh, you're studying biology, you have to do this. I think being open, having more open curriculum as well, being able to branch out and explore not only the STEM, but also the humanities aspects, because the intersection of those are so important as well. So I think it would be a place where you would be able to explore whatever you want, learn whatever you want, but in the end have the same goal of advancing our world together for the future.
Hi, my name is Mary Bliss McCrossan. I'm with Uncommon Construction, and I have a question for all of you, actually. Going back to the conversation around the additional barriers that kids growing up in low-income communities face when it comes to exploring their own entrepreneurship and their own career pathways, what role do you think that employers and continuing education and colleges play in connecting with high schools to help kids transition successfully from high school into their next steps in life? Because I know in our organization, we actually have an entire program to help our kids go from high school graduation to college or career, and it's a whole program, you know? So I'm really curious to hear what you all think about that disconnect that's happening, especially for kids from low-income communities.
Oh boy, I only have my own experience, which is a little dated, but I think community colleges have a huge role. I think having courses that are not degree courses, but that are of interest courses, so that you might dabble in something before you commit. Because taking out a student loan and going to a four-year university is a big commitment. And so how do you know this is really what you want to major in or do? So getting more connections with the community through learning that is in place. Not asking you to move across the country to a college first, but I'd love to hear what you all think.
Yeah, I would say I think it's imperative that those players are reaching back into the high schools. I think whether it's a community college or traditional four-year institutions, local employers, like that connection is so important, especially if we think about like if we're really aiming to grow, inclusive regional economies, these players all need to be working in unison. I also think that we have an idea at JFF. We have a report called The Big Blur, which really calls on states and communities to really rethink kind of the grades, say like 10 through 14 experience, because we're seeing so many folks kind of get disconnected in the middle. So if you were to step back and say, I want to blur together the academic experience, the work-based experience into a whole new model, what could that look like, And ideally, like, could that be a whole new kind of governance structure or like system that we could be creating? So we're working with a couple of states that are part of an action lab. They're actually trying to move in that direction. So really like blowing up and rebuilding.
Anything to add?
Well, one thing I'd say is a lot of people at my school and a lot of students I know are more focused on a grade than actually learning. And they're more focused on getting a certain number on the transcript so that they can go to college. Mm-hmm. And I think if we put less of an emphasis on that and more of an emphasis on how am I learning and growing as a person, but also a student, that would be so much more valuable and definitely, I think, prepare people for their future as well, and also help them like explore different topics that they're interested in that they can maybe go into in the future as well.
Great, thank you.
Hi, thank you all so much for being here. So I have a multi-part question about skills, the changing in demand skills. So what are the skills industries most want to see in people entering the workforce? What are the skills students are most curious about learning? And how are these skills changing because of AI? Thank you.
Great.
I'm happy to start like from what we're calling the durable skills aspect, which I think is interesting because I feel like there are so many reports that come out and say, these are the top 10 skills. And I think if you looked at all of those reports, a lot of the lists are very similar. And if you look back even to some of the work that was done in the 90s, like when I started my career, the lists are similar. So if you think of like essentially human skills like problem solving, collaboration, teamwork, working across differences, those I think are skills that remain constant and that they will continue to remain constant. I think the challenge there is how are we teaching those skills in the school system? So how are those skills being taught? How are young people aware of, oh, this is what I'm learning. I'm learning to collaborate. I'm learning to problem solve. I'm learning to work with people who are different than me. And how are we assessing those skills? Because I think that is still the issue that we see on the employer side. And I think that's why we see a continued kind of default to employers hiring on the basis of degrees. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to assume that the student who has a degree from X is good at problem solving, right? But what does that mean for, the vast majority of young people who don't have traditional degrees? So I think if we really dig into how we teach and assess these like core group of like 10 to 15 skills, I think we will like benefit everyone.
Yeah. As a student, the skills I'm most interested in learning, to answer your question, are the skills that aren't just specific to a specific job or major. Something that I can apply to all around my life, to the people I know, but also to all aspects of my world, not just for, learning this specific job for this specific skill for this specific job, but learning a skill that I can apply anywhere. And so I think it is those durable skills, like you're saying. And so, I think there's a connection, I guess, between what the industry wants and what students want to learn as well, which means all that's left to do is implement it, right?
That's right. That's all. That's right.
Right.
And are you prepared to pop in and answer the AI portion of that?
Oh, AI skills?
Yeah, so there were 3 questions. What are most in demand from employers? Correct me if I'm wrong, please. What are you most interested in as students, skill-wise? And then how is AI affecting these? Was that your question?
What AI skills, I think it was, is that it?
You would,
How's AI affecting the engineering skills?
how is AI affecting? Are you comfortable?
I'd say AI is affecting this because if you think about the span of a person's life, AI is making it so that you could analyze so much more data or access so much more data. And if you think about kind of looking for a needle in a haystack, it's a way to sift through that hay faster. I think the skill there is defining that needle, is being crisp with your question, is knowing when to pivot, and then having that agility. So I think in the past, I was a specialist. I went into a certain field. That's what I was going to do. But that's not the wave of the future. It's interdisciplinary learning. It's bringing learnings from other places and bringing them to your current job. And AI is the same because you're getting results. You can't predict what results you might get. So you may get an answer that you don't even recognize as being correct, and you need to be agile enough to take a different look at that, see a different perspective. So I think keeping an open mind and being that type of lifelong learner is super important, even with AI.
Okay. Y'all have touched on this some already, but where do you see the future of work going in the next 5 years? And for our current students, how can they best prepare for this very quickly changing landscape? And then how do we ensure that institutes are supporting our educators to be able to make sure their students are going to be prepared for industry?
I think it's super important for industry to be pairing up with and reaching out to those schools and those educators and students and really giving them signals of what they see coming. They may see things a little bit further in the future or faster than some schools or institutions. They may be able to pivot faster, but I think keeping that constant lane of communication open so that we're clearly describing the skills that we want. And students and institutions can start to think about how they're building those pieces of the puzzle, or even how they're better describing the experience that they do have. So I can see that as just getting more intense in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the jobs of the future are going to be ones that we can't even imagine at this point, probably, right? And that's going to be changing more and more rapidly. So I think the more we can focus on these kind of durable, transferable skills, like across the board, really more involved in the education system at scale, and how do we incentivize that? Like, is there a role for federal policy, for example, to like incentivize some of these partnerships? And then I think as a nation, like really rethinking our approach to talent development and lifelong learning. I mean, like we have such a fragmented, like outdated federal system right now. Like, how do we really rethink this in a way where people will be incentivized and given the opportunity to like upskill and reskill like continuously throughout their career? I think that's going to be needed more and more. And right now we have more of a safety net system versus a, what I would call like a launch pad system.
Great.
I mean,
We have 90 seconds left, so if we can get this question in, otherwise some of us will be out in the hall after and hopefully can answer questions that were not.
Sure. Hi, Eddie with Cat Schools down the street in San Antonio. Lino, can you tell me, like, was there a moment, like, when did you discover your voice? And then if you can share an example of how your school supports your voice.
Yeah, well, really quickly, you have 60 seconds left. I think I discovered my voice when I did my first ever invention competition when I was 10 years old. And that is really crazy to think about, but I was interviewed for The New Yorker. And it was a very, very quick interview. Like, it was my small part of this big video clip that they were doing, but being in that room and just having all these people listening to me and this big camera recording on me, focused on me, they wanted to hear what I had to say. And that kind of changed my perspective, right? Maybe I do have something valuable to say. Maybe I can stand up for other kids who have stuff to say and people aren't listening to them as well. So I think that was the moment for me, and just having people willing to listen to me, willing to hear me out and understand what I was saying. So I think that was a big important part of it for me.
Great. Maria, Jobs for the Future, Lino, serial inventor, and Jennifer from Autodesk, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom with us today, and thank you for all for joining us. I will be out in the hall, and I hope some of the others will be out in the hall. If not, please look up the incredible work they're doing, and just thank you.